Happy Friday, folks, and welcome back to the Connected Mindset Live. I'm your host, Greg Tomczyk. So grateful to be here with you guys for another connected conversation. This is going to be a very special episode, one that the team came back to me as we were preparing for this, and we're extremely excited about what this gentleman brings to the table and everything that he's been through to get in front of us today. It's going to be such a blessing, an impactful conversation. So without further ado, Mr. Chad Hufford, thanks so much for joining the show.
Greg, it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to our conversation, the opportunity to encourage your audience.
Heck yeah, man. I'm looking forward to it as well. We have a lot of ground to cover. It's going to be a free-flowing conversation. But one of the places I want to start, because a lot of our audience is looking for that next breakthrough, that next mindset to kind of rewire how they're navigating their life today. What mission are you on? What are you hoping each person listening in today is able to walk away with?
Well, Greg, my why has always been, I think, to help people experience more freedom and abundance in their life. And I did that a long time ago as a personal trainer, helping people create a more fit and healthy version of themselves so they could live in more freedom and abundance. And I think right now my mission is to change people's perspective on investing and finances and preparing for the future, and even their outlook on retirement itself, as retiring to something, not just retiring from something, and giving people that opportunity to experience freedom in its truest sense and have more fulfillment as they really pursue their own missions here in life.
Yeah, I think we're all on a mission to solve some type of problem. And I think at the core, it's mindset. And if somebody wants to, be free, they need to make sure they're having the right mindset going into it. And I love how you talk about that at Veritas, but also on the other, platforms you're on, the other shows that you've been on, and how your story has gotten you there. You started as an athlete, you were doing personal training, and then medical school, wanted to be a doctor. And one of the things I heard you say is healing through finances. I love that you put it that way, because as a doctor, you're so passionate about healing people, and as a personal trainer, you want to help people heal themselves. What did it take to get you there? Walk us a little bit through the journey of Chad and kind of what got you to pivot into the space you're in today.
Well, both of us grew up in playing sport and athletics. You at a higher level than me, but I did compete in college and worked with a lot of various, and it just, this idea of coaching has always been so close to my heart. When a coach helps you become a better version of yourself and creating objectives and preparing you to meet those objectives head on, I've just applied that to various areas of my life. And when it comes to finances, I've been active. And when people are experiencing scarcity, experiencing anxiety in their finances, it has a ripple effect into every area of their life. I mean, Greg, you and I have both seen people who, the issues in their financial life, it affected their relationship, it's affected their health. So I think healing through finance is a real thing, because the human body does not compartmentalize stress. So if you are stressed about the future, you're stressed about your finances, that's going to have a ripple effect. It's going to bleed into the way you deal with your kids. It's going to be the way you deal with your spouse, the way you even run your business. So by helping people experience more confidence and clarity in their financial path, my hope is that we change the trajectory of their life overall, and again, just pave that pathway to not just having more, because that's not what abundance is, but experiencing true abundance, which I believe is a life of fulfillment and impact when you are on mission, serving people in the way that you want to serve.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the common questions we get is, what did your transitions look like? I was transitioning out of professional baseball to cybersecurity because I had that cyber attack. What did some of the biggest transitions in your life look like, and what were some of the things you pulled from that?
Well, so as you said, I was pursuing a career in medicine, and I really thought that was how I was going to make a dent in the world. That's how I was going to help people experience more freedom and abundance. But I met the woman who's now my wife and the mother of my 6 kids, and she had a really rough background, and just grew up experiencing things that a child, any human, should never have to experience, but especially a kid. I mean, even down to having Christmas in a homeless shelter. And that's how she grew up. That was life as she knew it. And by the time I met her later in life, I realized, what she was really looking for was stability. She was looking for security, not the uncertainty and the intensity of the life of a surgeon, or the wife of a surgeon. Um, and I also know how I pour myself into things, and medicine for me would be very consuming. And she wanted a family. She wanted to raise kids. And so I just second guess my choices. Like, do I love this woman enough to pivot and to take a different direction? And she never asked me. She never asked me not to continue down that path. But I knew that it was going to be a real struggle. And the way I'm wired, and I had two surgeon mentors that really spoke into my life. They said, Chad, I don't think this is what you're looking for. I think you'd be tremendous at this, but the way you're wired, it's gonna be really hard for you to find that balance. But then I had to look back at my own life, and I grew up in the financial industry. My dad taught classes at our church. He taught classes in our local community, helping people become better stewards of their finances. And I saw the impact that had. I saw the change that people experience, the freedom that they experience as they learn to control their money, so their money didn't control them. And I also, as we spoke before, like, he was at every baseball game, every tournament, even the ones I didn't want him to be at, because you can't yell at the umpire when your dad's standing right behind him looking at you, But I was like, that's what I want for my kids. I want to be there. I want to meddle in every area of their life as well. So part of it was selfish. I'll be honest. Part of the transition, part of that pivot was wanting to be able to create a business that I could run and own, rather than having a job that owned me. And I've been able to do that, blessed to do that. And my reasons, again, were more for family at first. But as I've been doing this, there's been huge passion. I do feel like I am on a mission now. It's more than just a career and a calling. It is a mission, because I've seen the impact that we've been able to make in people's lives, and I couldn't think of anything more fulfilling to be doing right now.
I love it. Yeah, I think for a lot of people, they're looking for that feeling in something they're starting. And you hit on a key point, that it takes some time. It takes maybe some other drivers to get you into what you need to be in. And then that flame continues to build. It's not like you start something, the flame's there, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's, you start it for a specific purpose, selfless or selfish. And I don't think there's good or bad in doing that, because you're doing it with a service mind to help others. That's what you were doing. Maybe that wasn't your extreme passion at the beginning, but it was to serve your family. And I think a lot of people start out and they want that passion to be there from day one, and it's never going to kind of, up and down, but between those decision points.
Well, and that was very much the case for me. And I started in 2007. And of course, 2008, 2009, we had the global financial meltdown. Yeah. And I saw the destruction that financial stress and financial worry caused for people. And I also, it was a hard time for me. It was a hard time for our family. People weren't wanting, when Bernie Madoff and all this stuff going on, and Washington Mutual and Bear Stearns collapsing and all these bailouts. Nobody's wanting to trust a biochemistry kid to hand over all their finances to, it was a very trying time. And there was a struggle. Like, I was like, man, I don't have to do this. Like, there's easier ways to make money. And there was really a pull. Like, did I take the wrong course? Should I just go back to medicine? I mean, not to say that it was easy, but it was a much clearer path. It was a much more direct, right? So there's definitely that internal struggle. But that's when I really had to double down. It's like, if I'm just doing for this for the money, if I'm just doing this for the career potential, then there's way easier ways to go about this. And it really forced me to find a deeper why, and to really look at what people out there need and be able to bring them the message that I had. And I also saw how important that message was, because there was so much fear, there was so much anxiety and even destruction around finances. I thought this is way bigger than financial planning and investing. This is changing the trajectory of people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. And it sounds like that fire continued to build. I know the audience will be extremely curious what it looked like to go from that person that wasn't really trusted in the market because you had a biochemistry degree, what that process looked like of starting to build trust, starting to get families to trust you with, the truths that you were telling them. And then kind of the snowball starts to build over time. But I think that's what a lot of people listening in today are going through, is trying to break through that wall that we're familiar with on, a market that may not understand what we're fully trying to do. They're paranoid, so they don't want to make decisions. But getting them to that light bulb moment to say, I now trust Chad and I want to work with him, in this capacity.
Well, trust is an interesting thing because we can be deserving of trust, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we will be trusted. So the number one thing is to act in a way that is deserving of trust.
Yep.
I will earn your trust even if you don't give that to me. And it's this idea of telling people what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear, what they need to know, but giving them sometimes the hard truths. But the big thing, what it really came down to, Greg, is vulnerability, because this is a very vulnerable, just like medicine. I mean, you talk about going into a doctor and you got the gown and it's open in the back, your butt's hanging out. Like, I mean, that's uncomfortable. You're going to a stranger, you're talking about, hey, I've got this weird mole in this place that I don't want to show you, but you're gonna have to check it out. But financially, we kind of do the same thing. So people come in, we're asking them about their long-term dreams. What do they want retirement to look like? How much money they've invested, how much money they make, how much debt do they have? Questions that some of their best friends don't even know the answers to. We're asking people to unveil a very sensitive, delicate, and actually intimate part of their life. So what I learned is I have to go first. If I'm asking this person to be vulnerable, I need to be vulnerable as well, and not pretend to have all the answers. That was one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
Is having that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome and telling somebody, I don't know the answer to that question, but you know what? I'm going to find it. I'm going to find the expert who does, and I'm going to get back to you as soon as I can. But taking that humility to do that, and being vulnerable with them, and kind of in stepping out in that, and just going first, kind of gives other people the permission to be vulnerable back, which is what I need to do my job. And one of the things that I learned very, very early on, but it's still hard to practice even to this day, is, Greg, people might be impressed with us by our strengths. They might see the strength in us, what we've accomplished and all that, but they're going to connect to us through our weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you might impress somebody. I mean, I've watched you speak. I've interviewed you for my podcast. I mean, you present yourself very well. People are like, man, that dude is impressive. But when they hear your story about some of the things you've gone through, the vulnerability you experienced when you were taken advantage of, like, that's where people can feel connected. Like, not only am I impressed with this guy, now I want more of what he has. And that's what again, different circumstances, but the same idea with finances. Being able to share my struggles, share my own insecurities, allowed other people to voice theirs.
Yeah, and feel more secure because they know they're not the only one going through it. And I think that there's such peace in that. And I think there's this term between the thermostat and the thermometer. People are one or the other. And it sounds like you became the thermostat, where you were setting the tone of how you wanted other people to treat you in that vulnerable way. And I think that's so important for a lot of people. And a lot of the resistance we face in life is because we want other people to solve our problems or connect with us without them knowing what we're going through, and which is a really hard thing for the mind to wrap around. But I think when you show other people your vulnerabilities, that's the only way they can really connect with you at the end of the day.
What you said is so important, Greg, because I am a problem solver. Like, that's what I want. And that's one of the things I loved about mathematics and chemistry is, if you work the problem right, there is a solution at the end. It might be hard, but there's so much ambiguity in life. And sometimes there are no right answers. And you go back to 2008, 2009, like we've already talked about. or COVID back in 2020. There were no right answers, and there was so much uncertainty. There wasn't a crystal clear solution. And just being able to be in that with people and say, I know this is scary. I'm scared too. I don't have all the answers, but we're in this together. We're going to figure this out. I had a couple that I've known for a very long time in my office yesterday. This just happened yesterday. And they're in their early 60s. And the husband was recently diagnosed with dementia in his early 60s. They've planned their whole life for this. And I told him, I said, the ideal circumstance just flew out the window. Like, that's gone. Because we're trying to figure out like how to maneuver around this. And they've got this beautiful house, and he did all that caretaking for it. And I mean, it's gorgeous, stunning. The outside, I mean, it looks professionally curated. He does it all. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. And we're looking, do we sell our house? And I just had to tell him, like, the ideal circumstances, the ideal solution, that just left when you got diagnosed. So we're trying to pick up the pieces. And I don't know what this is going to look like, but we're going to figure this out together. We'll continue to pivot. And I think that was really powerful for them to just have the freedom that they don't need to find this perfect right answer, because sometimes there aren't solutions. There isn't a perfect fix. But knowing that you got somebody in your corner that wants that future for you as bad as you do, and it's going to fight for you, I think that makes the world of difference to people.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And I feel like you have to have great coaches or mentors in order to get to that realization, because that's a realization that most people don't get to until maybe they're at their end of their life, where they're now realizing how critical it is to have those people in your corner, because now you're making life and generational altering decisions. What did it take for you to get there? Was it parents? Was it mentors you had throughout your sports days, or even after, that helped you come to how important that is to have that person in your corner, not just do the planning, but to make these hard life decisions?
I think parents. I grew up very different than my wife. A very stable household, two parents, a mom and a dad that love me very much, and they're not perfect, but I always knew I was loved. I think having that security really helped. And I had some fantastic coaches growing up, but I think I took a lot of that for granted too. And I'll be honest, Greg, I was at a time in my life when I was living pretty selfishly. I was pursuing some athletic endeavors, and there's a guy that I was working out with pretty consistently, and he was one of the first F-22 pilots in the nation. And it was like a true life Top Gun scenario. They had I think half a dozen guys, maybe just 5, that they hand selected out of the Air Force to fly the F-22 Raptor. It was like 25 years ago, and this guy was one of them. And he was off on missions a lot, but this is pre 9/11, so we weren't in Afghanistan, we weren't in Iraq yet. And when he was in town, we would often work out together. And we got done working out one day, and good workout, whatever. Wasn't thinking anything of it, and he just stopped me cold, and he said, "Chad, what the heck are you doing with your life?" He didn't say heck, but this is a family show, so he said, "What the heck are you doing with your life?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, I'm 19. I'm at a gym making really good money. I'm doing whatever I want. Like, I've got it pretty easy. And he was like, I think that's part of the problem, is you have it pretty easy. There's way more that you could accomplish, and you're wasting your life. You're wasting your talent. Like, why don't you go to school and go to college and stretch yourself and grow? And I got really defensive, Greg, I'll be honest. I was like, well, why don't you quit drinking? I just pushed it back on him, because he stressful job, and he drank a little bit, and so I just got defensive, and I just blame shifted, but he wouldn't let it go. And in fact, he called me on my challenge to him. He's like, "Fine, you go back to school, I'll quit drinking." But it was having somebody that cared enough about me to have that hard discussion, and somebody who was accomplished enough, because he was no slouch. In fact, this guy's a general now. He was one of the generals appointed by Trump during Trump's first administration. He's a 2-star now. So this guy was very accomplished. He had a very clear pursuit of excellence in his own life. So he built up that relationship capital to call me out, to have a difficult conversation, and to really push me to become a better version of myself. It was a very high level of accountability. And I think that's a lot of people lack, a lot of men especially. We don't want to be told that we're doing something wrong, or, you know, the old joke is, you know, men don't want to take directions. We certainly don't want to take correction.
Yeah.
But having people in your life who love you enough to have those difficult conversations has been life-changing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here. I feel most connected to the people that have those conversations when I don't feel like having those conversations, if that makes sense. And I think those hardships, going back to that vulnerability piece, people see things in you that you don't see in yourself. And it's that feedback loop that we all need to make those corrections. And the people that don't just hold it in because that's the easy thing to do, those are the people that we typically go to when things get hard, because we know they'll tell us the raw truth. And that's ultimately what we all need. We need a board of, you know, people around us, or whatever we want to call it, our crew, our group, our family, that just gives it to us raw, straight to the point. Obviously you have to have a little bit of feel based off of timing, but I think those types of people that just tell you how it is and what they see, that those people help you grow the most, and you feel most connected to them. And one of the things I always say is connection's a currency, and the only way we connect is through those raw, authentic conversations.
Yeah. So you said connection is currency, and the way I phrase it is building that relationship capital.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. And I mean, and we mentioned it earlier. I said, you know, a big part of our mission is telling people what they need to know, not necessarily what they want to hear. And you're right. There's a certain amount of tact that is necessary. You know, I think a lot of people who pride themselves in being brutally honest get a lot more joy out of the brutality piece than the honesty piece. But love does not have to diminish. Love and care don't have to diminish for honesty to increase. I think we can bring both to the table. And it might sound weird. I mean, you got, you know, A-type personalities, driven professionals. We're here talking about love and connection, but it's important. Like, all the proof in the world doesn't matter if there's not a connection, if there's not that relationship capital. So we can't expect to have those difficult conversations with people unless we've done that. And it goes the other way too. And here's what's so critical about that conversation with that pilot who's now a general is, I don't know if there's anybody else in my life at that time that could have had that conversation with me. And here's why. The people in my life who were pursuing excellence in something bigger than themselves, who were serving others, they didn't have that gym life that I had. They didn't have that athletic prowess. The people in my life at that time who had the athletic prowess, who were competing at a very high level in sports and athletics, didn't have the pursuit of success outside of that. They were living kind of selfishly, just like me. So Max, the gentleman we were talking about, Max had both. I knew how important his gym time, his physical fit, I knew how important that was, but he didn't limit his life to that. It was much, much bigger. He was a part of something much, much bigger. He was serving in a much greater way, and he did both at a very high level. So he had built up that capital on both sides. And I do believe to this day, he was probably the only person in my life that would have had that conversation and had it had that impact. Even still, I got defensive. And I'm not saying it turned my life around right away. I was an arrogant kid. I braced against it. But because of who he was and how he lived his life, I couldn't brush it off. I had to really think about what he was saying. And it sunk in. It stung. It hurt. But it needed to.
Yeah, I think I just remember back to my cyber attack. I had a mentor, and it was the one I thought about when I was going through something difficult. His name was John. He was a lawyer, and I called him up and said, "Hey, I'm going through this. You know, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to save myself." And he said, "Stop trying to save yourself. You know, go save somebody else, and, you know, go save your clients first." And that was hard to hear, because I wanted to minimize my financial burden and the burden it was doing to my, you know, heart and my stomach and my head, and things I didn't understand at the time. And he told me that hard thing, and it sticks with me today when I'm going through something really hard in my business. I'm often in my own world thinking about, oh my gosh, woe is me, and I need to take care of myself and be selfish because that's the only way I'm going to get out of this. But I often, refocus my effort to, other people, which it sounds like you went from, helping people in the gym to, finding what was next, which was medicine, and then eventually the financial world. And I think that we need those people to push our buttons in different ways when we're in our own head and we're almost like in this hurricane within our own mind. And that's kind of the disruption it sounds like you were feeling was you were frustrated, you were pushing back because it's not what you wanted to hear, which is hard for us as men, especially when we feel like we're being attacked and pulled down because that's not what our mind frame is telling us at the time.
Well, we are by nature selfish human beings. Like, I mean, I probably don't need to explain to people, but let me just give a quick example. So, let's say you're in a group and somebody's taking a photo and they show it to you, like, hey, is this picture acceptable? The first person you look at is you. It's like that Toby Keith song. You don't want to talk about me, my, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like that's how we're wired. So they give you this photo. You're only looking at you. Your best friend, he's got a snot bubble, hanging out. Somebody else is like in the middle of a blink and they got that look like somebody hit him in the back of the head with a 2x4. You don't care about any of that. You're just like, I look good. This is a good photo. Like we are looking out for us. That is how we're wired. And what you just said is the need to be others focused, to take our focus, our energy off our problems and to look at how we can serve others. Greg, I'll be honest, I don't think I'm here today doing this if I didn't make that shift. And it is a hard shift. It requires vulnerability, it requires sacrifice, but there's no growth inside a comfort zone. And I'm not saying I got it all figured out, but making that shift to be others focused is, I think, necessary to continue to do those hard things. Because if I stayed self-focused, if I was worried about my financial needs, the needs of my family, I think I would have gone back to medicine. There's nothing wrong with medicine, don't get me wrong. I still have a passion for it, and I'm grateful to work with a lot of physicians still, and we still nerd out on the stuff that they're doing. But looking past my own difficulties, especially financially, because I started this business from scratch, making calls inside the Forerunner because we had a brand new baby. It was the only quiet place in the house. There was no certainty in my life. I had no idea how we were going to make it financially, but focusing on the financial struggles that other people were going through, that gave me the resolve to persevere and persist through my own struggles. And I think if I don't make that shift, I think I give up. I think I go back, I take a different path.
Yeah, when we focus on the end result of getting that commission or getting that next client that's going to help you with your bills, it's kind of like when you flip it on its head and say, if I help this person, it's going to come back, and karma is going to come back and help me as well. I think that happens for a lot of people when they're others focused, which I think is something, it sounds like you came to that realization through doing the hard internal mental work. I always say life's an internal job. It starts internal and then flows out to the outside world. And I think that sounds like that's what you experienced.
Well, let me add one little nugget to that story that we kind of unpacked with the fighter pilot. So 6 months after Max had that conversation with me, I was taking classes again. We went forward with the challenge. He quit drinking for a month. I took some classes. I took anatomy and physiology. He said, you can't take any gimme classes. They had to be tough. I didn't know this going in, but anatomy and physiology was one of the weed out classes for the nursing program. And so I go in there, and at the time it was mostly women. So it was like 5 or 6 women for every guy. And I'm like, maybe college isn't going to be so bad. So I go through the class, and the next semester I take a full load, like 12 credits. I'm still working part-time. And at the very end of the semester, I get carbon monoxide poisoning. And the levels I was exposed to are often fatal within 30 to 60 minutes. And I slept in it all night. And here's the crazy thing is I woke up, got sick. I thought it was food poisoning at first, and then it was like violent convulsions. I won't get into the details. It was awful. carbon monoxide poisoning is not a peaceful way to go. Even my dreams as I was sleeping were just violent and confusing, and it was, but I kept waking up and going back to sleep. And with carbon monoxide poisoning, you go to sleep and you don't wake up again, because the body basically asphyxiates while you're breathing, because the carbon monoxide pushes oxygen. Sorry, I'm gonna nerd out. My biochem coming back. It pushes oxygen off your hemoglobin. So even though you're breathing air, your blood can't carry oxygen to your tissues. So you gradually asphyxiate while you're breathing. So there's no good reason for me to be alive right now. Let me just put it that way. Now that didn't hit me right away. I was angry at first because it was a very long and painful recovery. I had excruciating headaches for probably 2 months afterwards. I lost like 25 pounds. I went from going the best shape of my life to not being able to get up the stairs. It was devastating. But a few months later, as I started to recover physically and emotionally, I was hit with the realization that should have and could have very easily been it. I could have been 19 years old and my life would have been over. And I believe that we're all going to stand in front of God and give an account for our life. And it was really scary for me because I was living my life pretty selfishly up to that point. And with all the blessing, all the opportunities that my life, my parents, my family, my friends had given me, I had very little to show for it. And that would have been a very scary thing to hand over to God and say, this is all I've done with my life. So that was on top of the conversation that Max had with me, a very, very, I just call it a come to Jesus moment where I was like, I need to live my life differently because I don't know how many chances I get. And I'm living with bonus time basically. And I believe that every single day is a gift from God, but I believe the gift we give him is how we live each day. And the gift I had up to that point would have been pretty shameful to hand over. And I don't want that for my life. I want to be able to be proud of the life that I've handed back over. And that was a part of that life change, again, to live others focused. And even though at the time it was devastating, and again, I was angry, I was frustrated, but dealing with my own mortality and how precious life is, I think it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
Turn that pain into purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
What an experience. How does carbon monoxide poisoning typically happen? Is it through like AC? Is it through like fireplaces and gas? Or
it can happen a lot of different ways. So what happened to us is our heat exchanger cracked. And here's the crazy thing is, this is April. It was a week before my 20th birthday. And here in Alaska, so it was cold, but not super cold. So I got home, it was a Friday night, got home, and the house was gradually getting cold. I knew something was wrong, but I'm thinking there's just an issue with the heater. It was late. I'm going to sleep. I'll worry about it, in the morning. I'll bundle up. And I didn't think that there was a safety issue. I thought it was a convenience thing. But my family was out of town. They were on vacation. I stayed home because I had finals the next week. And it was me. It was just, God didn't need their attention. He needed my attention. And I do believe it was a God thing. And so I go to sleep thinking that maybe a breaker had flipped or pilot light went. Like I didn't know. But never thought that I was going to be faced with my own mortality that night. And I was able to get a neighbor's help. Neighbor actually came, I don't even know why. Neighbor came over hours later, got me out of there. We had carbon monoxide detectors, but they were upstairs in a box. So apparently that's not how they work. So anyways, it was all this stuff set up for this perfect storm for me to have that experience. And I'm just grateful here to be able to be talking about it. Because like I said, it could have and probably should have been it. That's
extremely, soul shocking. I think it shocks your soul when you go through something like that. And the fact that the neighbor came over, did you call the neighbor or did you reach out?
To be honest, I don't remember. Yeah. I don't think I did. I was so delirious at that point, but I don't believe that I don't know why he came over.
Yeah. Wow. So do you look at those two moments, you know, with Max and going through that carbon monoxide poisoning as really your biggest transition points, because it was around the same age. I mean, that was your
Yeah,
19th year.
I believe they were stacked on top.
Yeah.
One kind of led to the other. At the time, I saw them as completely separate, but
Yeah.
both of those were inflection points that had a synergistic effect in my life. And here's what's really cool about all this. So this was in early 2001. So we all know what happens in September, right? So this is April 2001. I almost lose my life. Um, Back in the year 2000, in the fall, is when Max had that conversation with me. Well, Twin Towers fall in 2001, September 11th, 2001. Everybody knows that. Well, as one of the best fighter pilots on the planet, I never see Max again. He's deployed. He's doing missions and stuff. He got transferred. Of course, all our military was scrambling, but because of his training, I mean, they shipped him off pretty soon. Never saw him again. So he didn't get to see the impact that he had in my life. And 20 years goes by, and I get a call from this guy who's now a general. And I got to share my family and the people I've been serving, and try not to get emotional about this I'm talking about, but got to share the impact. And I said, you probably don't even remember that conversation at the gym. He said, not only do I not remember, he said, not only do I remember exactly how that first beer tasted after that month. It was the best beer I've ever had in my life. But he said, Chad, I wanted to have that conversation with you for so long because I saw the trajectory that some of your friends were on, and I saw the difference in you, but there was never a perfect time. There was never an easy time to have that conversation. And I kept delaying it. I kept procrastinating. And then I don't know why that day, but I just there's never going to be an easy time to have this conversation. So that's why I said it. And I think even there's a lesson in that. There's never going to be the right time to have a hard conversation. There's never going to be the right time to do the difficult thing, to make the sacrifice today to build a better future for yourself. But that he cared about me enough to put his own comfort, to put his own agenda aside, put himself in a very awkward, difficult situation. It was life-changing for me, and now life-changing for other people, because I've been able to take that same intentionality and purpose, pour into the lives of others. And I just can't believe sometimes that the life that I've been given. God has blessed me so much. He's put so many wonderful people in my life, and I just feel an intense obligation and duty to be able to pay some of that forward and help make an impact in the lives of others around me. And I know our circumstances are different, but your mission is very much that same way, to take some of the hard things and difficulties that you faced and allow others to experience freedom and security and confidence because of the sacrifices that you've been able to make.
Absolutely. Yeah, that story gives me shivers, because I can just feel the impact. And 20 years later, you're able to have that conversation, and with a lot of reflection, I'm sure, between that 19-year-old Chad and 20 years later, and the fact that he remembered it so clearly, and that he could remember the taste of the beer after, and how much he cared about you, that he really wanted to tell you so bad that eventually he mustered up the willingness to do it. And I think that just shows all of us how we can say a couple sentences to somebody, and it can create a drastic inflection point in somebody else's life. And I think that is just that in itself, I feel like, is one of the reasons to live. It's one of the reasons to wake up and be purposeful and really care about people by doing the hard things, not just caring for them by being, always positive or always telling them what they want to hear. I just think that's so impactful for myself and the folks listening in.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a huge thing. That didn't take a lot of money. It didn't even take a lot of time. Now, it did take relationship capital. It did take a tremendous amount of intentionality. But for people to make an impact in the lives around them, you don't have to have a lot of resources. You have the resources you need to make that impact. And just another quick story, kind of along the same line, just of vulnerability. And so this goes back about 12, 13 years ago, and I'm in the middle of a transition. I'm a few years into my business. Veritas is going fairly well, but I'm transitioning how I'm getting paid and the structure. And it was going to be a very, very good long-term pivot, but it's very, very hard in the short term. So in 2000, I believe it was 2012, made about $25,000 with 2 kids and 1 on the way. Our mortgage with our utility bills was about $2,000. So you don't need to be a calculus expert to figure out that doesn't work very well. $25,000 a year, $2,000 a month just in house payment and utilities. And it was devastating, not just financially, but as a husband, as a father. I felt it was emasculating. I felt like my wife grew up in poverty. Now, sorry,
Yeah.
now I'm putting her back in it. And I felt, oh gosh, so much shame and guilt. And I remember one day, so my wife's pregnant. We've got a 3rd kid on the way. We don't have any room for this kid. We don't have any money for this kid. I'm not sure like what we're doing for bills. And we went up to my parents to eat. And I'm sure we told the kids like eat extra because we don't know we don't know what we're gonna have to eat next week. So fill up. So we eat at my parents. We come home. We're pulling the driveway. It's winter time, and we can see kind of over a little snowbank in front of our front door. There's a box, and I pull into the garage. My wife gets out, and she says, "A box." Sorry, man. She goes, "It's a box of groceries." To this day, I don't know who left that box there. And with 2 kids, fed us for a few days. But it was a reminder to me that there was other people watching out for me. Like it gave me enough strength to keep going. And it was a sacrifice. I'm not saying I'm not diminished. I mean, let's say it was $100, it cost somebody $100, but that also was life transforming for me. And just to remind me there was somebody in my corner that noticed my struggle and was going to fight for me, even though to this day, I don't know who left. Who knows? Maybe they're going to listen to this, but it doesn't take this momentous, huge act of generosity. It just takes intentionality. And I believe if we live our lives with consistent intentionality, you don't have to be rich. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be a great speaker. You don't have to have a platform like you have, Greg. You don't have to have the expertise. You just have to be intentional and be purposeful in how you love on other people. And I believe each one of us can have a tremendous impact and leave a huge dent in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. What a story. What a journey. And I think there may be people listening in today that are going through that exact situation of, going into debt to support their family and trying to start a business, do the impossible. And I think we need to talk more about that, with the journeys we've gone through, because typically we get to a point of stability and that's all we talk about is how we got, how we are at stability and our business is here, and all the things that are good about that journey versus the hard parts that we go through. And I know I've gone through a lot of financial stress in my business, and I've tried to navigate it, going to sleep back at my parents and doing a number of things that you have to do when you're trying to go out of your comfort zone, start a company, do something great in the world. Sometimes there are those dips, and I love how you show up in the world and are able to bring those to people in a digestible, understandable way, because it's not easy to do that. So I definitely appreciate it and value the way you show up, Chad. And so how can folks get in contact with you if they want to reach out, learn more about you, learn from you, mentorship, things of that nature? Before we get to the last question here, which is really gonna really kind of seal the conversation up around connection. How can folks reach out to you? What's the best way if they want to learn from you and kind of get that truth through Veritas? Because I know Veritas means truth, and a lot of people are looking for truth financially, but also holistically in life. And I think that's something that you preach very clearly.
Well, and for me, money's just a tool. And I believe anytime money becomes the objective, that then we're on a really dangerous path. Money should not be the goal. Money might it's easy to measure, and it might be a part of how we get to the goal. And that's where people get that confused. But money is simply a tool. And it's the tool that we use to help people build better futures. So they can connect with us. VeritasAlaska.com is our website. We help people all over the United States. We're founded here in Alaska. It has some cachet to it, so we keep it in the website. But Veritas.Alaska on Instagram. And the stuff we're trying to put out there on Instagram, especially right now, is they're life principles, because the same principles that help people build wealth and financial security are the same principles that help you build better relationships, better marriages, better health. It's making a sacrifice today for a better future. It's serving your future self instead of stealing from that person. So even if people aren't super interested in the financial aspect, or maybe you feel like you're not ready for that yet, please follow us on Instagram, because I think a lot of what we're putting out is encouraging for just building a better future in general, even outside of finances, because abundance is about how much money you have or how much wealth you have. It's about the fulfillment that you experience, the impact that you make, and your ability to uplift the lives of others.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that you're using your platform for life lessons, mindset tips, things that are really going to elevate people, beyond. And you said it earlier, not retire from something, retire to something. And I think that's what we're all trying to do in life. And sometimes we get short-sighted on, we just want to hit this $1 million, or we just want to get to this point, and then our life will be happy and free and fulfilled. And that's typically not the case. Once people get there, then they want more and more and more. So I love what you're doing, Chad. One of the ways we like to end the show is, what does connection mean to you today?
It means being a part of something bigger than myself. We've already touched on this a little bit, but if I'm serving me and my own comforts, then there's always something else. You just said it. It's more and more. There's always something else out there, and there's never enough for the human psyche to be completely satisfied if we are focused on ourselves. But if we're connected to something more, and we have people around us that we can serve, but also people around us that can hold us accountable, have those difficult conversations, we're part of a team. And I just believe life is a team sport, and being connected means being on mission with people that we love and care about to accomplish something that's far greater than any of us could do alone. That's what being connected means to me.
I love it. Chad, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a blessing to collaborate with you today, and definitely looking forward to staying connected to you, continuing the conversation.
Greg, keep up all the hard work. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you very much for this conversation.
Absolutely.